Looks like another liberal pipe dream might be just that, a dream, or perhaps a nightmare that we're all going to wake up from. Ladies and gents, welcome back. Now, this one hits close to heart. I'm a mechanic. For many of you that don't know that, I'm a mechanic. I work every day. I pull wrenches and I fix cars. This is what I do when I'm not talking about politics on the internet. And cars are an important part of all of our lives. It's how we get around. It's how we get to work. It's how we travel to different places. We take our vacations with automobiles. And the government is trying to limit how many automobiles you can get your hands on. Literally, this is what they're doing. Now, this was a project that Stephen Guilbeault wanted to bring forward. And it was the plan to phase out the sales of gas-powered cars and trucks, gas and diesel, by 2035. And it was expected to start next year. By phasing out, I think every company would have to have 20% of their fleet, or 20% of all vehicles sold in their lineup, be EV, electric vehicles only, zero emissions. Now, what that really effectively does is it puts a quota on how many gas and diesel cars they can sell. They would have to sell these electric vehicles, and then they would be allotted another amount of cars and trucks that they could sell that are gas powered. This is artificially done, and it really just creates an artificial scarcity for gas cars when gas is still the most viable alternative. Now, the auto industry has come out and said, listen, you have not built the infrastructure necessary to have all of these electric cars on the market, and it's really going to be damaging to the economy. And they're actually coming out publicly now and making announcements saying, forget it, you can't do this, it's not going to happen. And I think they're seeing where it's going politically, that the left is out the door. They're on their way out the door. Polling is not really looking particularly good for them, as we've been pointing out here, but this is the reality of the situation. They're saying there is no infrastructure for this. It's not viable. Ryan Garrettson putting this out on Twitter, saying the auto industry is calling on our governments to scrap the EV mandates. There's no viable path forward for 100% electric vehicles in 10 years. It's time to bring choice back to our Canadians. It's crazy.
Concerning is new data revealing that the pace of the charging infrastructure rollout is slowing. Both are critical preconditions to mass EV adoption. According to the federal government, the IZEV Consumer Purchase Program has exhausted its funding before the first year of mandated ZEV sales targets come into force in 2026. And the build-out of charging ports slowed in 2024 by 3,000 public ports compared to 2023. This is at a time when the government's own analysis is calling for an unprecedented acceleration in the pace of the charging infrastructure build-out.
It's just absolutely untenable. There's no way they can pull this off. And again, I mean, I've been an advocate for hybrid vehicles because I just think it's a more efficient way of going about it. But we'll get into that in a little bit. What else did he have to say here?
100,000 public ports are required this year. There are 32,000 available today. At the same time, provincial governments in British Columbia and Quebec have established even more aggressive sales mandates, requiring 90% and 85% zero-emission vehicle sales by 2030, respectively. Both governments have recently pulled back on consumer purchase incentives and failed to build the necessary charging and electricity capacity. It should be obvious to everyone now that provincial and federally mandated zero-emission vehicle sales targets are no longer ambitious, but a complete fantasy. There is no pathway to 100% zero-emission vehicle sales in the next 10 years, with the supports being provided to Canadians. Dictating what vehicles Canadians can and can't buy without providing them with the supports necessary to switch to electric is a made-in-Canada policy failure. Today, we are calling on provincial and federal governments to scrap the mandates. Thank you.
Yes, scrap these mandates. Any mandates these governments are putting forward, especially the liberal governments, short-sighted and don't see the reality of the situation. Now, many people last year were figuring this out over the winter period in middle Canada when it got really cold. And guess what? Batteries don't perform well in the cold. Turns out you can't get very far with an EV when it's minus 40 outside. It doesn't matter how much you've charged it, it's not going to get very far. This is just the reality of the situation. At the end of the day, as well, the life of an automobile, or an electric automobile, is not what it's all cracked up to be. Here's a man from Australia talking about this, and I'm talking about this is a guy who is enthusiastic about electric cars. Did this all voluntarily, set it up all by himself, and came to a very different conclusion than a lot of the environmentalists that are talking about this.
Here's the problem. I have a Nissan Leaf, and when it was delivered, it said 0 carbon. And I said to the salesman, well, no, it's going to be plugged into a coal power station. He looked at me shocked and he said, no one's ever said that to me before. So I decided to get solar cells and a separate battery bank, 24 kilowatt hours it is, in the garage. So my Nissan Leaf is plugged into the sun. The interesting thing is, after 10 years of owning the Leaf, the battery had to be replaced, which cost $10,000, and now the battery in the garage is flat, so that's going to cost another $10,000. So when I added it all together, my Nissan Leaf cost more money in the first place. I added it all together. Driving the Leaf per kilometre is about twice as much as a petrol Leaf. So if you want to go truly renewable for a car, you have to be wealthy.
Yeah, you got to be quite wealthy. And listen, he didn't even mention the environmental impacts of disposing of batteries. This is unbelievable. Not only the environmental impact of disposing of it, but the mining of all of these things, the geopolitical impact of going to some pretty unsavory places to get those minerals, when we could even be doing it here. We could be getting a lot of those minerals here. But guess what? Our environmental agencies won't allow for it. This is a ridiculous hypocrisy of the EV industry. It really is hypocritical because it's not really saving the environment at all. In fact, the people who are doing the things right, and I was talking earlier about hybrid EVs. This is the way to go forward. And a company in Canada has been pushing for this, to make commercial vehicles that are, electric hybrids, diesel engines with an electric drive. And what it does is it actually makes it more efficient overall. You have all the power you need in the electric drive, and you supply the energy via a diesel engine, and it's on demand. You won't need as large of a battery bank, so there's less denigration to the environment from having to mine so much darn lithium and cobalt. So it's having your cake and eat it too, really. It's having the power of a diesel engine, but having the efficiency of running it at operation, like op temp, operational RPM load, and all of that, to get the most amount of efficiency you possibly can squeeze out of every drop of petrol there is in the tank. It's amazing how well this works. And guess what? The government's not even buying these guys. This is a homegrown Canadian company, and the government's been giving them on every level, federal, municipal, and provincial, has been giving them a hard time just to operate in this country. We don't want to. Do we want to see a company like this bail, take off, and go to the United States? They've been made so many offers to go and do what they're doing elsewhere. They're trying so hard to stay in Canada, but it's our government and their idiocracy that's causing them to suffer and not be able to produce as much as they possibly could do. And this is why I just can't get over how idiotic these new rules are. So it looks like moving forward, we're seeing a big swing to the right. Conservatives look like they're going to be taking over in government. We've seen that in the United States, and it's looking good. If it happens in Canada, maybe we'll ease off of these restrictions. Not only ease off these restrictions, forcing people into electric cars, but also ease off the restrictions of people who are innovating in that space so we can have some more efficient vehicles in the future. At the end of the day, most people just want to save their money and have a car that operates. Anyway, leave a comment in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And of course, we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.